Hey everybody, welcome back to another Filming Stories. We haven't done one of these in a long time because I haven't done anything in quite a long time. And with I guess you could say, the release of this short film, I decided to kind of bring it back in some form and do this one specific video with regards to just this specific little short film that me and my friend did together, which was called Carousels. And it's now available on YouTube if you guys want to check it out. So I'm just kind of letting it sit for a couple of days just so you guys can get a chance to watch it. And yeah, so. But I just wanted to do a little bit of a video kind of discussing where all this stems from, just how how the thing came to be, and just talking about some of the rationales behind release, and amongst a bunch of other things. But this dates back a couple of years, and I had talked about this in a little bit more detail in a previous video. I did a video for Filming Stories. It was called I made something that I can't release, and that video details some of the older versions of the specific story, but I'll do a little more of an abbreviated version just to, so it's not long-winded. Um, but essentially, I had just finished another short because when I was in high school, I would do a lot of shorts, and I also carried that over to when I was in college. And during my college time, I had also worked on a short, and that was, if you followed any of the Filming Story videos or stuff like that, that was the one where I was like, when I kind of shaved off a lot of my head, kind of did a fade, and then lost a little bit of weight, just kind of went the weird method type bullshit. Um, and after that was done, as kind of you would always when you're in this filmmaking space, you'd always be looking for what you do next. And um, this idea was, I think, in conjunction, is being made during the time of when I was making that other film, that other little short film. Um, I was working at In-N-Out at the time, and I think I was like starting to piece out like little outlines, little ideas of how story can go. And I won't get into like big details as to how like each specific version was, but at first it was going to be set in the desert, and I had actually put a lot of time into that specific iteration to the point where I actually went out to the desert and went location scouting, and actually have laid out like marks on a road to where we would hit if we were to film this specific version. Um, and I was like getting a crew together, so there was things that were kind of moving along, but things didn't really materialize in that specific version. And I decided to kind of reconfigure that idea. And that version, that first specific version that was going to be set in the desert, that also had a script attached to it, amongst other things. But the new version that we went with, not the version of which you've seen, but the version that we went with, basically version 2.0, um, we ended up going for, and this is when Sebastian came along and started working on this. We decided to kind of do something of a very free spirited type environment, to where we basically filmed a lot of just stuff, you know? And that's when this was becoming also incredibly introspective, also. Because before, I mean, there was things that I can attach to, but with this specific version, not the one that you see, but this specific version, there was a lot of my own personal stuff that was becoming filtered into the story. And at that point, I decided to work with Sebastian because it was just at first out of convenience, because I just didn't have the resources to really do much of anything, if I'm just being perfectly honest. Um, but it also became just a natural fit. It was just a great guy to be around. I consider him like a third brother, and to have him just in any capacity, he's always fun to hang out with. Um, and I'm a little bit of an antisocial type, so getting to interact with a lot of people, it could be a bit daunting, and I could end up, just not doing well under that sort of pressure. And I'm guilty of that in a lot of ways. Um, in past projects, I mean, but where I've like gotten over it in my head, or my anxiety's gotten the best of me, you know. But working with someone, a personal friend, on something personal, it kind of was, kind of felt right. Um, but uh, but yeah, we started working on this, and when I approached the second version of this idea, that's when I went with the idea to not write a script, um, because I got into my head somehow that I wanted this to be as just flexible as possible. There was enough structure to it. There was an idea of sorts of how I wanted things to go, but in terms of laying it out on a piece of paper, I didn't want to do that, because I felt that the approach to this whole idea, of course, or this idea of sorts, was cycles, about repetitions, about meeting at the same spots over and over again and not finding ways to get out of it, or perhaps having having that self-awareness to your own issues, but not necessarily wanting to get out of it. So it's just this continued cycle of just trauma and self-harm, or whatever it is. These ideas that that some pertain but don't, at least to my own personal self, not the extreme parts, um, but those ideas, those eventually made it to the final project of what you see. But that was the origin point, was the specific idea of having no script, going very freeballing, and then we went for like 7 or 8 months and just filmed a bunch of random things. A lot of things that correlated to my own personal life, and it just became a lot more personal, like incredibly personal, to the point where um, I decided at one point, and it was at a very pivotal moment, kind of a down period, I guess you could say. Um, that's when I decided to step away from it, because at that point um, it just felt exploitative, and I didn't want to release something that was super expressive of my own being, because one, I'm putting out information about myself that I just think is highly unnecessary, and it's so apparently so. It's not that it's filtered out, it's not that it's being packaged in through the confines of a specific character, or experimented through technique, through edits. It's just out on Front Street, and I just didn't want to do it that way, because it just felt inappropriate. Um, and as I've kind of illustrated also in that video, that last filming stories video, it got a little graphic at some points. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, like there were points to where there was nudity involved, and amongst other things. And I actually had people who I had pitched this to not call me after revealing such information, or presenting my pitch, as it were. And I don't blame them one bit, because it was a very, very different mindset that I had back then. So I don't blame those people one bit, for not wanting to interact with me after that. Um, but eventually, after a very specific moment took place, I decided to step away from that, from just that specific film, and just generally with doing the whole filmmaking thing. And I'm still wanting to do that. It's a little bit of a different mindset. I'm more willing in different aspects, but I'm not going to personally take on the responsibility of helming, writing, or whatever like that. It's just not healthy for me personally anymore. Um, and I recognize that within the second iteration of this specific film. And now we get to the version of which I put out there. And um, again, this was kind of formed from a down period. Um, and it was what I seeked out to do from that second iteration, which was not to have a script, just to have some kind of apparent line of structure. And in this case, it was from a block of text that I wrote out from, again, having another down period. I wrote out this little text of just feelings that I was experiencing at the moment. And at that time, I was also I was having second thoughts about that specific story because once you put so much time into something, it's hard to just step away from it. You know, it's hard to just completely just say no, I don't want to do that anymore. Like it's hard, especially when it's also a passion of yours at the same time. Um, but I've always recognized that that's not something that I want to go back to. There was a reason why you stepped away, and um, those feelings were becoming a lot stronger, lately. I'll admit, there's been maybe a little bit of a crisis period going on personally, just because I recently turned 24, and I don't know why, but that particular number, just at this particular point in my life, just kind of hit me hard, and um, I had a little bit of a down period after that, and at some point, I decided to write out my thoughts, and I was using it also in understanding because my whole feeling when I write is to have a visualization of it. And when I was writing it out, I was visualizing it and contextualizing it in the way that I would with that, in the form of a story. And I was during that writing also remembering what it was that I was making back then with Sebastian, and somehow, some way, through the writing of what was put together, it just made sense, and it wasn't in a script, so there wasn't like act one, act two, act three. It was just literally just one or two paragraphs of how I was feeling. And from that, it just made sense. And at that point, we had collected a lot of footage from that second iteration. I have like a full SD almost of just a bunch of footage from that time. And it just all kind of clicked, finally, because when we did it the first time, or the second time really, but the first time without a script, it was just chaotic. Like there was just no rhyme or no reason to it. And with this monologue that's now in the final iteration, it just finally created that structure that was missing, the entire time. And at that point, I started to, because at this point also I had been on doing a YouTube page now for a good year. So I had been working on my editing skills, working on editing software and stuff like that. So because before I never had any awareness to how to use softwares, and um, I would always have someone else, do it for me. That would be Chris Kaufman, who is a lovely, lovely editor. Um, and at that point, at that point, I decided that I have this and I have that, and I kind of ran with the energy. Just to be perfectly frank, I was just running with the energy. I wasn't really thinking about the who or what, the why and when and how. Like I was just kind of running with the energy at this point within this final iteration that was released. Um, got some footage from the couple of years back when we were filming that second iteration, and I then wanted some external dialogue or external visualizations to take place, and that's when you get those mountain tops, the mountain shots, and the drunken type of state that I was trying to portray. Um, that's what I was trying to get at with having an eternal and external dialogue, and it just all kind of came together. And the reason why I'm putting it out now is because I feel like there's more cushioning within how it is represented, because I don't drink personally. And also, just by how it is framed, I feel like there is a lot more, again, more structure and more consistency in its delivery rather than how we were doing it before. And also, it is exactly what I wanted. It was, experimenting with a story that doesn't have script, just having just text, just having a few piece of just words essentially. And the results are as you see. And um, I've had, I've literally last night I was thinking about it up until, because by the time I record this, the film's already out now. Um, I had thought about, thinking, I was like, do I want this out? And, um, and I mean, there's definitely a part of me that would say no because of just the whole history that's behind it, and some of the conversations, just literally what it's discussing. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Of course, it has relations to my own personal feelings. I would say though that the it was a moment in vulnerability. I wouldn't necessarily say that. Um, I wouldn't say that some of those texts would completely pertain to how I feel, but definitely a large chunk of what is discussed, yeah, of course it is, it is in reference to how I feel. Um, but I also look at it as a way to one provide closure to that specific story because, like I always said, I always was having doubts about that story ending the way that it did, and that was always a way. That was always a way to block me from returning to that space, returning to that whole filmmaking place. And like I said, I still wish to step away from it just because I don't like how I mentally put myself in those positions. I mean, just look at the films that I that I choose to make. Obviously, it's not healthy for me, um, but but I feel that in just literally just finding a way to mentally let that go, it's better to just see it materialize, I guess, rather than just living in that what if scenario. And also, I think that with the type of conversations that are there, I think that there could be interesting piece of conversations that could be made from it. I'm not seeking any attention from it either. I've done very little to like discuss it. I made like one post on Instagram and that was it. Didn't do anything with it. I'm not planning on releasing this to film festivals. I'm not doing any like big extravagant marketing stuff, blah blah blah. That's not what I'm doing with it. This is just my way. Like the way I put it to my mom last night after she watched it was that I'm gonna do exactly the opposite of what this film is trying to preach, which is to move on, you know, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I haven't really thought of it too much today. I mean, I've been hanging out with my brother a lot today. It's just been, he got his Switch too, so that's been a great distraction just to hang out with him. Um, but there's no urge, like before there'll always be like an urge to make something, and I think that I was always because I was always seeking some kind of attention, you know, and I would go above and beyond with it. I would just make a ton of posts about it. I would go on like doing the film festivals and blah 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 blah, and I'm not doing that this time. I'm just putting it out and then I'm just moving on, and I also realize, like when you have all the materials right in front of you, it's very difficult to just sit there and be like, let's not do it. Like it's harder when everything is literally at your fingertips. You know, and I'm pretty sure that there are people who will probably say that you probably shouldn't have released this. um, and I definitely can agree to some extent. I can definitely agree with those opinions. Um, but at least to my own personal feeling, I just feel it is good for my own, uh, for my own self to just have that out so that I don't feel the urge to have to do anything ever again. So, because I just feel satisfied now. I don't feel a need to continuously having to like, oh well, look at me, look at this, look at that, because that was the whole point of what I was doing anyway. Um, and also, for fun, this it was just purely that of just editing for in this specific instance. It wasn't about like the acting per se. It wasn't about the writing. There was no writing really. I mean, it was just again like text. It wasn't about being detail oriented either. It was about running with a vibe, running with energy, and then I kind of equated that to surfing, where it's just you're just riding that wave, and you're just continuously just pushing through. You're moving through all the crashes, and eventually you'll pass over. You'll eventually, dock out. Um, and that's the feeling right now. I'm just kind of just right now docking out, and just, you know, but just choosing to just now just move on, And like I said, there could be different forms in the future, different like I've done stuff with other people and it's in like very small capacities, like as like a cinematographer or as just like, just I guess you could say like a PA or whatever like that, just hanging out, you know, like I'm more suitable there because I'm at the mercy of someone else's vision. I'm not trying to become that type of guy again where I'm like obsessive and detail oriented. Like, that's not the vibe that I want to have anymore, and that wasn't the vibe I think with making this, you know. And that might be evident in watching it. Some audio may not be all that clean. Some of the some maybe some pacing, maybe perhaps is not completely well refined, but by how I have viewed it, by how I generally feel by looking at it, and it's not me projecting onto the project. I mean, there is a technical aspect that does come about with viewing it something in this context in the filmmaking space, but I'm not becoming like, oh, well, we have to do like this and this and this and this. Like, it's not like to where it has to be so specific. It's just, does that work? Yeah, that works. Does that work? That works. Does that work? That's fine. It was just making it as simple as possible. And, we got the whole thing done from the time that I wrote the thing out to releasing it now, probably like 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks max, and by just overall idea, it's been, around, we've been working on the thing, I guess, for like 2 years or so. So, so, you know, it's, it's something that's kind of always been there that I've always wanted to just find some conclusions to. And I feel that I have. And I think that, um, and I think that it's better to just let it go by materializing it and then just letting it go. Like the visual that's always been in my head for the past few days is that of a bird, like a dove or whatever, and then you're just releasing it. And that's the feeling here, It's not the feeling of like, ooh, I can't wait to hear what people think about this. Ooh, I can't wait to put this in film festivals. I can't wait to do this and that. That's not the vibe with this at all. It's just I'm putting it out, moving on. Hey, let's have a discussion about something else. Like it's just something that just is there, If you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. Like that's how I feel, I'm not seeking attention from it, you know. So so but yeah, so I mean that's the whole experience that came with it. Obviously, I owe great thanks to Sebastian, who has been through the whole journey with me. He was there throughout all those ups and downs, and just from getting the thing started up again and helping me with filming some shots up in the mountaintop. Um, yeah, I mean he was a great help, and definitely there's a reason why I credit him as the other director on this project, because he was there from literal beginning to end within how we've conceived this specific idea. Um, so it's he is just a awesome guy, just lovely, funny, charming. He's a very sweet man, and I'm just very blessed to have him around. Not just for this, but just generally in life. He's just a very great guy. Again, I consider him like a third brother. I also owe thanks to some of Sebastian's family as well, because they were helped out in certain ways. His sister Vicky, just wanted to say thanks to. Also, her husband Orion. Um, they helped out at certain points. They didn't make it to the final iteration of this project just because it didn't fit anymore with how we were making things now. But I still owe them a thanks for being a part of just that journey in and of itself. Um, so yeah, so it's it's admittedly nice to return to that mindset for a little while, but it's also a lot better to just move on from it. Sometimes a little revisiting is a way to heal, and hopefully, truthfully, and honestly, I do believe that this will be the last time that I do anything like this ever again. I am not going to go dipping into these waters again. I'm going to do something a lot different in the future. If that, if there ever is a new thing that I wish to explore, I'm going to pursue it. Maybe a documentary, maybe something else, whatever it is, it's not going to be anything like this again. So this will be my last time with it. And if I end up doing this again, someone in my family has the right to slap me in the face. They absolutely do. I make that uh, I make that a thing if this ever happens again. So, um, but but yeah, that's the story of Carousels. That's how it all kind of came together. That's why it's out there. That's the form that it's taken. So there you guys have it. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. This was kind of a long-winded video, kind of a long, just rambling of sorts. So hopefully you guys, found something of interest of this. Um, but if you guys have seen the project, obviously I would love to hear your thoughts on it. If you like it or not like it, hey, whatever, that's cool. Just let me know what you think. Yeah, again, thank you just to everybody who was a part of the 2 year that my friend Sebastian said it best. Like this was just a spontaneous endeavor. Once we finished this last version of it and put this out, he told me it's like, yeah, this was incredibly spontaneous, and it's like, yeah, it really was. Like this specific window of time, these 2 weeks to then going to the mountain shot, getting the mountain stuff. Yeah, it was a very spontaneous thing, and by just generally how I view the film, I feel it matches in the spirit of it, at least to my own opinion. But anyway, let me know what you guys think. And yeah, let me know your personal stories if you guys have any, for any, people who do films or whatever like that. Let me know your own personal stories. I would love to hear any. And, any reasons or rationales why you choose to tell the stories that you do, or why you don't choose to tell any stories anymore. I don't know. Let me know. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.